Thank both of our witnesses, and Mr. Chairman, thank you for conducting this hearing. I've traveled with the chairman to countries in our hemisphere that were hooked into China's debt because there was no other option, they thought. The reason there was no other option is it didn't make a lot of good business sense to do those types of debt financing. And China was doing it not for the economics of it, but for the leverage that it would receive in those countries. And it's not unique to our hemisphere. We see it all over. We see how many countries China now has debt, whole debt. And there's a lot of misgivings by these countries. And they're clearly being used in coercion from China to do certain other policies that are against our national security interest. So we could talk about critical minerals and the supply chain challenges, the questions that you just had, but we need a strategy that allows us to counter the cohesive practices of China and certain other countries that are using their minerals to coerce national security issues. And it's got to go beyond just the business sense of the transaction that is the normal way we judge issues. So if we leave it just to market forces, China's going to win, Russia's going to win. But if we are strategic in the way that we counter for a level playing field, then we can make a difference here. And I know that there's legislation that's been followed by my colleagues. I'm sure it's been talked about during this hearing. But I just really want to underscore the importance for U.S. leadership here. I know EU is doing things. We should be in the forefront in leadership. So give me some sense of confidence that we understand the challenge that we have and that we're not just going to use the traditional evaluation procedures or funding procedures, that we recognize that we have to fight this on a more level playing field than it's currently being given to us through our adversaries.
Senator, thank you for the question. I couldn't agree with you more. What's our competitive strength? Our partners, our ability to pursue high standards. In the Mineral Security Partnership, to take one example, we have actually published what we mean by environmental, social, and governance standards, what we mean about working with communities, observing labor rights, and the like. That's important. And we cannot engage in the race to the bottom, frankly, because we just won't win. We have to raise the standards. But also, we have put together a budget request that has three components that go exactly to what you're talking about, creating an international infrastructure fund to work on projects that may not necessarily attract private investment. And I use the example of the Pacific Islands, a small island, incredibly strategic, but there's no market for it. But that's part of our request. We've also talked about strengthening the DFC by including a $2 billion equity fund that they can do for equity. Right now, that is their most sought-after type of investment, and it's the most expensive. And so we need to do that as well. And then the last one is to focus on the Indo-Pacific. That's where the competition is the hardest with the PRC, and that's where we're asking for an Indo-Pacific focused fund that will work on submarine cables, roads, ports, 5G, and the like. Those are the things that we are aiming for, because we will continue pushing our values, but we've got to back that up with funding.
And I agree. We have to be proactive in being there in the first instance, but then when the PRC is taking punitive action against a country because of its geopolitical stance that is consistent with U.S. policy, or we certainly don't want them to be intimidated by PRC, how do we deal with reacting to those types of negative stance by PRC?
So we actually have, and I won't mention the country for obvious reasons, but we actually have had a couple of countries that have come to us recently and said, we are not going to allow the PRC companies to enter our country for whatever reason. What can the U.S. do? Well, one of the things we've done is we have economists that have put together vulnerability studies to try and forecast what the PRC is likely to do. That's the kind of cooperation that we're doing with countries, as well as I mentioned earlier, working on our toolbox in case that the economic coercion materializes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Senator Cardin. I just have, since we're going to close out this record, I want to have a couple things for the record that I'd like to accomplish, so let me go through them as quick